They say money can't buy time. I used to think that was just something poor people told themselves to sleep better at night. But I've come to learn, painfully, that time, once lost, never comes back. Not even when you're worth $74 million and rising. It was a gray Friday morning when the email arrived. No subject line, just a single sentence in the body. He's asking about you. It was from Rachel. I stared at those 4 words as if they might rearrange themselves into something less indicting. 8 years since the divorce, and nearly that long since I'd seen my son. My son. God. Even the phrase sounded foreign in my mind, like a memory from someone else's life. His name is Ethan. He was just a baby when Rachel and I imploded, when I chose investment portfolios over bedtime stories, when I slept more in boardrooms than in our marital bed. She left. Took him. I didn't stop her. Not that I didn't care. I just didn't know how to show it. I figured a trust fund and private schooling would be enough. It wasn't. So why now? Why reach out after all this time? I called my assistant, Amanda, and canceled my meetings. Something about a new tech startup acquisition, frankly, I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt something beneath the numb machinery of my daily life. A pulse. A purpose. By noon, I was on a flight from San Francisco to Denver. Rachel still lived in the modest suburban neighborhood where we'd bought our first home. The same house she'd insisted we keep for stability, even when I offered to buy her a penthouse in Boulder. The Uber dropped me off in front of the 2-story colonial, unchanged since the day she left. White siding, blue shutters, a porch swing that creaked in the wind. Nostalgia hit me like a punch in the throat. I rang the doorbell, heart pounding like I was meeting a stranger. The door opened. Rachel looked older, tired, still beautiful, in that quietly strong way I remembered. Her auburn hair was pulled back, her eyes sharp but guarded. "You came," she said, almost surprised. "I came," I replied, because I didn't know what else to say. She stepped aside, and I walked into a house frozen in time. Same couch, same photos on the wall. A picture of Ethan as a toddler grinned at me from a crooked frame. And then I saw him. He stood at the bottom of the stairs, holding a plastic T-Rex, dressed in a red NASA hoodie and jeans. But it wasn't the clothes that struck me. It was his eyes. They were mine. He didn't speak, just stared at me like he'd seen me in a dream once, but wasn't sure I was real. I knelt. "Hi, Ethan. I know who you are," he said, voice steady. "You're my dad." I swallowed hard. "Yeah, I am." Rachel watched us, arms crossed. Then Ethan tilted his head, studied me. "Are you going to take me away now?" The question stunned me. "What? No, of course not. Why would you think that?" He glanced at Rachel. She shook her head slightly, but something passed between them, unspoken, tense. And then he said it. "Because Grandpa said you're coming to steal me. Like he stole Mom." I blinked. "Grandpa? Your mom's dad?" Ethan nodded. Rachel's face went pale. "What the hell is he talking about?" I asked. Rachel looked away. And that's when I realized this visit wasn't going to be simple. Not by a long shot. I hadn't thought about Richard Caldwell in years. Rachel's father, once a proud veteran, a disciplined school principal, and a man who'd hated my guts from the first moment we met, said I was too flashy, too ambitious, too damn full of myself. He wasn't wrong. But I hadn't been prepared for the cold hostility he threw at me even after I married his daughter. Now my son was parroting something strange. Like he stole Mom. What did that even mean? I stood in the living room, trying to keep my voice calm. "Rachel," I said quietly, "what exactly is he talking about?" She didn't answer immediately, just looked out the window, her arms wrapped tightly around herself like she was bracing for a storm. "Ethan, sweetheart," she finally said, her voice soft but urgent. "Go upstairs and play. Daddy and I need to talk." Ethan hesitated. He looked at me, then at her, then slowly turned and climbed the stairs, the creaking wood echoing like a ticking clock in a silent room. Once he was out of earshot, I turned to her. "Explain." She sat down on the edge of the sofa, shoulders sagging under a weight I hadn't noticed before. "It's not what it sounds like." "Then tell me what it is." She let out a breath. "My father has opinions. He's convinced you're here for custody. He's been saying things to Ethan, scaring him." I felt heat rise in my chest. I haven't even thought about custody. I just wanted to see my son. "I know," she said, almost too quickly. "But Richard doesn't. He sees your name in Forbes. Watches interviews where you say things like, 'I always get what I want.' He thinks you're dangerous." I'm dangerous. I laughed bitterly. He's the one planting fear in an 8-year-old's head. Rachel rubbed her temples. He's old, and stubborn, and paranoid. That's not an excuse. No, it's not, she admitted. But it's the reality. He lives with us now. Moved in 6 months ago after his second stroke. My jaw clenched. So he's here? In the house. She nodded. Upstairs. Doesn't come down much unless it's for meals. Good, I said, already moving toward the staircase. Then I'll go have a chat with the man. Rachel shot up. No, Alex, wait. I stopped. She never used my name anymore. She looked at me, truly looked at me, and her voice dropped. There's something you should know before you talk to him. I raised an eyebrow. She hesitated, then said, he told Ethan that the reason we got divorced wasn't because of your job or our arguments. He told him you had another family, that you abandoned us because you didn't want a disabled son. I froze. What? That's the lie he's been telling. That Ethan had some kind of disorder as a baby and you walked away. That you were ashamed. My fists curled at my sides. That's not just a lie. That's evil. I know, Rachel whispered. But Ethan believes him. At least, part of him does. He's confused. He wants to know the truth. I stared at the ceiling, where I imagined my son sitting in his room, wondering if his father ever wanted him at all. And something broke inside me. I want to talk to him, I said. Both of them. Alex. No. No more running. No more pretending. I'm not here to steal my son, Rachel. I'm here to win him back. One way or another. But even as I said it, I could feel something in the air shift. Like there was more I didn't know. Like some door was about to open that neither of us could close again. And I wasn't wrong. Because within 24 hours, I'd discover a truth so dark, so unexpected, it would make everything else seem like child's play. That night, I stayed at a hotel near the house. Rachel had offered the guest room, out of politeness more than warmth, but I declined. The air between us was thick, years of resentment, guilt, and silence hanging like smog. Still, I couldn't sleep. At 2:14 a.m., I found myself staring at the ceiling of a suite I'd rented for a corporate retreat the previous year. It was surreal, how a place that had once hosted champagne-fueled strategy sessions now felt like a prison cell. I kept thinking about Ethan. His eyes, his voice, the strange way he said, like he stole Mom. And Richard, the manipulator, the gatekeeper of my son's reality. I had to know what was going on inside that house. By 3 a.m., I was back outside Rachel's place. Parked down the street. Lights were off. Suburban silence all around. I didn't plan to go in. Not exactly. But I needed something. Closure, clarity, I didn't know. Old habits kicked in. I still remembered where Rachel used to hide the spare key, behind the loose brick on the back porch. It was still there. Within minutes, I was standing in the kitchen, bathed in moonlight and guilt. The same refrigerator hummed. The same scent of lavender from a bowl of potpourri on the counter. It was like stepping into a memory I didn't belong in anymore. And then I heard it. A low, muffled sound, almost like humming, coming from beneath the floorboards. From the basement. I paused. Rachel had always hated that basement. Even back when we were together, she refused to go down there. Said it was cold and off. I thought it was just poorly lit and dusty. But now, I crept toward the basement door, half expecting to be caught. But the house remained still. The door creaked open, revealing narrow stairs and darkness beyond. I descended. The humming grew louder. Not mechanical, human. And then I saw it. Richard Caldwell, sitting in an old recliner beneath a single dangling light bulb. His face pale and sunken, oxygen tube in his nose, but very much awake. And singing. Children's lullabies. I froze at the bottom of the steps. He looked up and smiled. Not surprised. Not even startled. I was wondering when you'd come down here, he rasped. What the hell is going on? I demanded. He laughed softly. You always were impatient. I took a step closer. You've been feeding my son lies. Telling him I abandoned him. Didn't you? He replied calmly. I stared at him, fury surging. Don't play games. I never abandoned anyone. No, he said, voice low. But you forgot something very important. What? He reached into a drawer beside him and pulled out an old photograph. I stepped forward to see. It was a picture of Rachel, smiling, holding a baby that clearly wasn't Ethan. A different child. Smaller. Eyes closed. No expression. What is this? I asked. That, he said, is your first son, My blood turned cold. Rachel had a miscarriage before Ethan. Richard's eyes locked with mine. That's what you were told. My breath caught in my throat. What do you mean? He leaned forward. He didn't die. He was born. Lived. For a while. But there were complications. Rachel never told you everything. She was protecting you. Protecting herself. I shook my head. No. This is insane. She would have told me. She didn't trust you, he said, his voice suddenly bitter. And with good reason. I want the truth, I growled. Oh, Richard said, settling back in his chair. You'll get it. He pointed toward a locked door at the back of the basement. One I'd never noticed before. But once you open that door, Alex, there's no going back. My hands trembled as I stared at it. And deep down I knew. He was right. My hand hovered over the rusted doorknob, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Richard didn't move. He just watched me with that same ghostly calm, like he was enjoying the unraveling. You're lying, I muttered. This is some sick manipulation. He said nothing. The silence was worse than denial. I turned the knob. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow hallway lit by flickering fluorescent lights. The air changed, colder, heavier. I could hear the distant hum of an old generator. It didn't make sense. Rachel's basement wasn't this big. This hallway shouldn't exist. And yet, it did. I looked back at Richard, but he'd closed his eyes again, humming, like this was just another bedtime story. I stepped through. The hallway led to another door. This one was metal, industrial, with a keypad. And that's when I realized someone had spent money, serious money, on this. I turned back toward the main basement. What the hell is this place? Ask your ex-wife, Richard said softly, without opening his eyes. I stared at the keypad. I didn't have the code. But then again, I'd built my fortune breaking into systems far more complicated than this. I pulled out my phone flashlight and examined the keys. Oil smudges. Were patterns. A lazy security mistake. With a few guesses and some logic, I got it on the fourth try, 0821. Ethan's birthday. The door unlocked with a hiss. Inside was a room unlike anything I expected. Bright. Sterile. White walls. A small bed. A bookshelf filled with toys and old picture books. A television mounted high on the wall. A child's drawings taped up everywhere. And in the corner, under the soft buzz of fluorescent light, a boy. He looked maybe 9, maybe 10. Thin. Pale. Wearing a gray hoodie. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, building a puzzle. He didn't notice me at first. When he finally looked up, I nearly fell to my knees. He had my face. You never forget seeing yourself in someone else, not just in a metaphorical way, but literally. His eyes, his jawline, even the crease above his nose when he looked confused. It was like Ethan, but not quite. He stared at me with the wary caution of someone who had never met a stranger. His voice, when he spoke, was soft but eerily steady. Are you the new doctor? My throat was dry. No. I'm not. He tilted his head. Then why are you here? I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I wanted to say I'm your father, but even I wasn't sure anymore. This boy was too old to be Ethan, too familiar to be unrelated. I'm Alex, I managed. Who are you? He hesitated. I don't have a name. I took a shaky step forward. Everyone has a name. Mom said I used to, he replied. But they took it away. My skin went cold. Who did? He looked up at the ceiling. The people in white coats. My head spun. That was when I noticed the scar on the side of his head. Surgical. Clean. Recent. I backed away. What the hell was this? Who was this boy? I turned to leave, but Rachel was standing in the doorway. Pale. Silent. She didn't look angry. She looked terrified. You weren't supposed to find him, she whispered. I stared at her. What is this, Rachel? Who is he? She opened her mouth, and then something behind me crashed. The boy had knocked over the puzzle table. When I turned back around, he wasn't confused anymore. He was smiling. And that smile? It wasn't a child's. The smile the boy gave me wasn't one of innocence or even mischief. It was calculated. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if he were analyzing my reactions. The way a scientist watches a rat in a maze. I instinctively stepped back toward Rachel. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. He's not normal, I whispered. No, she said. He's not. I looked at her, demanding answers without words. She wouldn't meet my eyes. The boy stood slowly. His movements were too smooth for a child. Almost rehearsed. I remember you, he said. I blinked. You what? His gaze locked with mine. You came once. A long time ago. You looked through the window. You cried. Rachel's hand went to her mouth. I never. I began, but she cut me off. You did, she said quietly. You just didn't know what you were seeing. What is he? I asked her directly. Is he Ethan's brother? A clone? Some experiment? Rachel's voice broke. He's your first son. I stared at her in stunned silence. She continued, tears sliding down her face. He was born at 28 weeks. There were complications. Brain hemorrhages. Doctors said he wouldn't survive more than a month. But he did. He kept fighting. And then, something changed. What changed? He started learning. Too fast. He never cried. Never laughed. Just watched. He started speaking in full sentences by age 2. Reading by 3. But he never showed real emotion. Just mimicked it. I turned to the boy, who was now calmly stacking puzzle pieces back in place like nothing happened. So you hid him down here? Rachel's voice dropped. Not at first. We tried everything. Therapy, schools, specialists. But nothing worked. He kept escalating. Escalating how? Her face twisted with pain. By 5, he was manipulating the house's Wi-Fi to hack our phones. By 6, he locked Richard in the garage for 12 hours. No expression. No anger. Just to test his limits. That's what he said. And then, she choked. Then he heard a neighbor's cat. I stared at her, horrified. We didn't know what to do. No hospital wanted to keep him. And Richard, he knew a guy from his military days. Some private foundation. They offered to study him. Help us. My stomach dropped. Rachel, tell me you didn't. We didn't sell him, she snapped. They just helped us set this up. Monitored him. Paid for everything. In exchange for occasional access. Testing. This is insane, I muttered. She grabbed my arm. You weren't there, Alex. You don't know what it was like. The things he said. Did. We didn't lock him up. We protected the world from him. I turned back to the boy. He was now watching us again, puzzle complete. Smiling. I can't hear you, you know, he said. I stepped forward. Why did you say you remember me? Because you're like me, he said, matter of fact. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. You don't feel like other people do. You observe. You calculate. That's why you're rich. Why people fear you. I stared at him, chilled to the bone. Then he said something I'll never forget. Ethan is weak. But I'm not. I'm what he should have been. The lights above us flickered. And then Rachel's phone rang. She answered it with shaking hands. I watched her face go pale. When she hung up, she whispered, It's Ethan. He's gone. Someone took him. My blood ran cold. And from behind me, the boy laughed. I ran up the stairs like a man possessed. Rachel was just behind me, her breath short and frantic. Every step echoed like a hammer against my ribs. Ethan's room was empty. The bed covers were thrown off. His NASA hoodie, the one he was wearing earlier, was balled up on the floor. The window was cracked open, just barely. A toy truck lay overturned on the windowsill, its wheels still spinning. I scanned the street from the window. Empty. No cars. No movement. Rachel collapsed onto the bed, clutching Ethan's pillow like it was a life raft. He was here. He was asleep. I checked on him right before I went to bed. How could this happen? I didn't answer, because something didn't add up. I turned back to the hallway, to the basement door, and then I heard it. Footsteps. Rachel heard them too. Her head snapped up. They were coming from below. We raced back down the stairs to the basement. The boy, my other son, was standing at the threshold of the metal door, arms crossed. His expression was unreadable. Where is Ethan? I demanded. He didn't blink. You already know, he said. No, I don't. Yes, you do, he replied calmly. He came to see me. Rachel stiffened beside me. That's not possible. That door was locked. He tilted his head. Not to him. Not after I gave him the code. My chest tightened. You what? He asked about me. I told him the truth. That I was his brother. That you didn't want me. That she, he pointed at Rachel, was afraid of what I could become. Rachel stumbled back against the wall. He didn't believe me. The boy continued. So I showed him. Showed him what? I said through gritted teeth. The boy smiled. The tapes. I turned to Rachel. What tapes? Her face went white. I had cameras installed in the room. Early on. To monitor him. To understand what was going wrong. He showed them to Ethan. I said, realizing the horror. You let him see everything? The boy shrugged. He deserved to know. And then, I asked, "What did you do to him?" "Nothing," the boy said. "He left on his own. I told him where to go." Rachel's voice cracked. "Where?" He turned to her. "The foundation." He wanted answers. He wanted to meet the people who helped create me. I stared at him. "You gave him their location?" He asked. He said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "And I want to meet them again, too." I stepped forward, fists clenched. "Listen to me, you twisted little." Rachel grabbed my arm. "Don't. He wants you angry. He's studying you." She was right. I backed off. The boy turned to Rachel. "It's not like I kidnapped him. He made a choice. Just like you did when you left me here." She swallowed hard. Then he said something that froze both of us in place. He called me his real brother. Silence fell over the basement like a curse. Rachel whispered, "Where is this foundation? Where did he go?" The boy's smile vanished. "I'll tell you," he said, "but only if you promise something." I narrowed my eyes. "What?" "Take me with you." Rachel gasped. "No," she said. "Absolutely not." The boy stepped closer. "You'll never find him without me. You don't know the entrance, the protocols, the people." He looked at me. "But I do. I remember everything." My blood turned to ice. He was right. I hated him. I feared him. But he might be the only one who could lead us to Ethan. And I had no choice. I nodded once. "Pack your things," I said. "We leave at dawn." By sunrise, the house didn't feel like a home anymore. Rachel sat silently at the kitchen table, her face drawn and distant. She hadn't slept. Neither had I. The boy, our other son, stood by the door, already dressed, a small backpack slung over one shoulder. He looked like any other kid on his way to school, except for the cold, mechanical calm in his eyes. "I've mapped the coordinates," he said, pulling out a folded sheet of paper from his pocket. "It's about 4 hours southeast of here. Remote. Underground. The entrance is disguised as an abandoned grain silo." I took the paper. Coordinates, diagrams, codes. Far too detailed for a child's drawing. Rachel looked at me. "You really believe this place exists?" "I believe Ethan is gone. And this thing," I nodded at the boy, "is our only lead." He smiled at being called a thing. It didn't bother him. I think he preferred it. We packed what we could. Clothes. Snacks. My pistol, quietly hidden in the glove box. I didn't tell Rachel. She wouldn't have approved. The drive was long and silent. The boy sat in the back seat, quietly tapping on a small tablet. I watched him in the rearview mirror. His posture, his breathing, everything about him felt off, like someone wearing a human costume too well. After about 3 hours, we lost cell service. The GPS went dark. "Turn right here," the boy said calmly, without looking up. "Gravel road. 2 miles." We followed his directions until the trees thickened, the light dimmed, and the world behind us disappeared. And then we saw it. A rusted silo, covered in moss, leaning slightly like it had been forgotten by time. Nothing around but woods and silence. "This is it," he said, stepping out. Rachel hesitated. "How do we even know they'll let us in?" "They won't," he replied, "unless I open it." He walked to the silo, placed his hand on a panel of rusted metal, and whispered a string of numbers I didn't catch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ground vibrated. A low mechanical hum rose from beneath the earth. The silo's front base cracked open, revealing a hidden stairwell descending into darkness. Rachel's breath hitched. I pulled her close. "It's not too late. You can stay here." She shook her head. "He's our son, Alex. My son. I'm not letting him face this alone." We descended. The air grew colder, denser, the deeper we went. Metallic walls, industrial lighting. The staircase spiraled for what felt like forever before opening into a vast underground corridor. The boy stepped forward like he belonged there. And then, a siren blared. Red lights flooded the hallway. "Intruder detected," a robotic voice echoed. Rachel screamed. I reached for my weapon, but the boy didn't flinch. He raised his hands. "It's me," he said into the air. Designation, Subject Echo 1. Authorization code, Indigo 11-7. The siren stopped. A sliding steel door opened at the end of the corridor. From within, a voice, human, female, spoke. "Welcome back, Echo." We stepped inside. What we saw changed everything. Dozens of children, in glass rooms, hooked to machines, monitored by white-coated staff. Some were reading silently. Others were staring blankly into space. One was painting the same tree over and over on the walls. Rachel gasped. What is this place? The boy looked at her. It's where they build better people. I turned to him, my voice a snarl. Where is Ethan? He pointed down the corridor, and then whispered. He's being prepped for testing. We ran. Past the glass rooms, past the soulless children with hollow stares, past the staff who didn't try to stop us, just observed us like we were specimens in an experiment. The boy led the way, navigating the halls like he'd never left them. Rachel clutched my hand, and I could feel the tremble in her fingers, not from fear. Rachel wasn't the fragile type, but from the unbearable weight of a mother realizing her son was caught in a web she never saw being spun. The corridor narrowed, lit only by cold white strips along the ceiling. The walls turned from steel to concrete, older, less refined. Why is he here? I asked the boy. He's unique, the boy replied, almost proudly. Emotionally intact, intellectually above average. The opposite of me. They want to see what happens when they introduce control variables. Control variables? Rachel echoed. They want to replicate me, he said, not blinking. But, with empathy. I stopped cold. You're telling me they're using Ethan to create more of you, but with a conscience? The boy nodded. Emotion slows performance, but it also helps them blend. I nearly lunged at him, but Rachel pulled me back. We turned a final corner, and there he was. Ethan, strapped to a hospital bed in a white room, behind a thick pane of glass. Electrodes taped to his head, a heart monitor beeping steadily, his eyes fluttering between sleep and waking. I slammed my fists on the glass. Ethan, he stirred, turned toward me, confused, groggy. Then his eyes widened in recognition. Dad, I felt my heart tear in half. A woman in a lab coat appeared beside him. Tall, mid-40s, blonde hair pulled into a severe bun. Her ID badge read Dr. Lena Kessler. She tapped on a control screen. The room dimmed. Ethan's bed began to tilt upright. Then she looked at me, calm as ice. You shouldn't be here, she said through an intercom speaker. Let him go, I said. Now. He came willingly, she replied. We didn't coerce him. Rachel's voice cracked. He's 8. Dr. Kessler folded her arms. He's also one of the most neurologically balanced children we've ever seen. Compassionate, intuitive, curious. He wants to help. I slammed the butt of my pistol against the glass. I swear to God. You can't break it, she said calmly. Bulletproof, blast-resistant. And if you try to override the locks, we flood the room with halothane. I froze. Rachel gasped. That's anesthesia gas. The doctor nodded. He won't be harmed, but he'll forget this moment. The boy stepped forward. Let me in, he said to Kessler. She looked at him. Echo, that's not. I can stabilize him, he said. You want the data, right? I'll trigger the response. Just give me 2 minutes alone. Kessler hesitated, then slowly nodded. The door unsealed with a hiss. Rachel grabbed my arm. Don't let him in there. He'll manipulate him. But I wasn't sure anymore. Echo turned to us and said, You want him back? You want him to choose to leave? Yes, Rachel whispered. Then let him see the difference between us. And he walked in. The door sealed behind him. We watched through the glass, helpless. Echo sat on the bed beside Ethan. Spoke softly. We couldn't hear what he said, but Ethan's face changed. He frowned, shook his head. Then something shocking happened. Ethan reached forward and hugged him. I felt Rachel go completely still beside me. The boy, Echo, didn't hug him back. He just stared ahead, expression blank. Then he turned to the glass and mouthed one word. Now. Kessler turned to the control panel, and everything went dark. The emergency lights kicked in, a dull red glow flooding the corridor. Alarms didn't blare, but something worse followed. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then a voice echoed through the facility. Lockdown protocol initiated. Non-essential systems disabled. Internal security rerouted. I pounded on the glass. Ethan. Echo. No response. The window had gone opaque, frosted over electronically from the inside. I spun toward Dr. Kessler. She was already gone. Vanished. Doors around us hissed shut. We were sealed in a hallway with no exits, no access panels, no staff in sight. They're resetting the facility, Rachel whispered. Wiping evidence. We triggered something. I turned to the boy's tablet, still lying on the floor where he'd dropped it earlier. I picked it up. The screen blinked once, then showed a message. Failsafe unlocked. Exit route active. Level -3. Rachel read over my shoulder. He planned this. He knew they'd react, I said. Knew what to trigger, when to say it. He's been manipulating all of us. We followed the only hallway still lit. Narrow, metal-lined, descending deeper underground. It twisted like a serpent, growing darker with every step. At the bottom, we found a door with a biometric scanner. A red handprint glowed on the wall. Rachel looked at me. That's Echo's. I hesitated. The scanner blinked. And then, without warning, the door opened. Inside, the lab was in chaos. Monitors blinking. Chairs overturned. And in the center of it all, two boys. Identical. One was slumped against the wall, unconscious. The other stood over him, breathing hard. Ethan! Rachel screamed, running to the motionless child. I followed, heart in my throat. His chest rose and fell. Faint but steady. Rachel turned him gently, tears flooding her face. It's him. It's really him. I looked to the other boy, Echo. He was trembling. I had to knock him out, he said quietly. He wouldn't stop talking. My blood chilled. What did he say? That we could trade places. That I could go with you. That he'd stay behind and pretend to be me. He stared at me, blinking rapidly. I almost did it. Rachel was frozen, staring at the two of them. One real. One something else. I turned to Echo. Why didn't you? He hesitated. Then, for the first time, his voice cracked. Because when he hugged me, I felt something. He stepped closer to Ethan, knelt beside him, looked at his face with something almost like awe. I don't know what it was, but it scared me. Rachel gently lifted Ethan into her arms. He groaned faintly, but didn't wake. We have to get out of here, she whispered. Echo looked at her, then at me, and then back to his brother. You won't make it out with both of us, he said. They'll come. They'll track me. So what are you saying? I asked. I can stop them. I know the system. I can flood the lower levels, wipe the drives, lock the research vaults. But I have to stay. Rachel stepped forward. You don't have to do this. He smiled, a sad, crooked thing. It's okay, Mom. I'm not real anyway. Not in the way he is. My heart stung. I wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him that he was real. That he was our son too. But part of me knew he was already gone. He stood, walked over to a wall panel, and pressed his palm to it. The alarms returned. Facility destabilization sequence initiated. All non-critical assets will be purged. He looked back at us one last time. I hope he grows up to be nothing like me. And then the floor opened beneath him, swallowed by shadow. Gone. We ran. We burst out into the forest like fugitives from a dream. Dawn was breaking over the horizon, casting pale gold light over the treetops. Rachel held Ethan tightly against her chest, her breath short and desperate. I gripped her elbow, half carrying her as we stumbled toward the car we'd left hidden off the gravel road. Behind us, a low rumble trembled through the earth. Then another. And then the silence shattered. An explosion muffled deep underground, like the facility was swallowing itself alive. The silo collapsed in on itself. Gone. Erased. Rachel collapsed into the back seat, cradling Ethan's head. He stirred again, moaning faintly. Mom, he whispered. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. I got in, turned the ignition, and peeled out onto the gravel road. Every part of me was shaking, but I drove like a man possessed. We didn't speak for the first 20 miles. When we finally reached a rest stop outside a small town, Rachel carried Ethan inside while I stood beside the car, staring out at the horizon. A million things flooded my mind. The lies. The hidden child. The brother who never got a chance to be a son. And yet, in the end, he made a choice. He saved Ethan. And maybe, in that final moment, he became something more than what he was designed to be. 1 week later, we were back in San Francisco. My penthouse had never felt more empty, so I filled it. Ethan moved in with me. Rachel stayed for a while, then got her own place nearby. We agreed. He needed both of us now. Stability. Honesty. No more secrets. The therapist called it trauma-adjacent amnesia. Ethan didn't remember much of the facility, only flashes. A dark place. A boy who looked like him. A hug. Sometimes, late at night, he asks me, Dad, was he really my brother? And I always tell the truth. Yes, he was. He nods, quiet for a moment, and then whispers. I think he was lonely. I nod. Yeah, I think he was. 6 months later, I got a letter. No return address. No stamp. Just a plain envelope slipped under my office door. Inside was a USB stick. And a note. You were right. I was real. And I'm still out here. I stared at it for a long time. Echo survived. Somehow. Somewhere. And he wanted me to know. Not because he wanted to be found, but because, for the first time in his life, he wanted to be remembered. I locked the USB in my safe. Told no one. Because one son needed peace. And the other? The other had already started writing his own story.